This is Pete Jensen, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Hell yeah, this is awesome. We get to do incredible things here at the Break It Down show, and this day's incredible thing is me talking with Pete Jensen. Pete and I were the same unit, Delta Company 165th, the mighty Delta. We were a company of legitimately, like you'd say, spies. We were counterintelligence agents, and so we get a chance to talk with Pete. And Pete wasn't there a long time when I was there, but we did overlap, and he ultimately trained and went on became a Green Beret. And it's very rare that someone with our field, the counterintelligence job is so complex, it's so challenging, and there are so many things you can do. And it's a wonderful job that people don't often leave it for something at a grade. And when you get there with these skills, it's not common to have these two things mixed together. So Pete has gone on to a fantastic career. We can only talk about certain aspects of it. So we're really going to talk about more about the job as opposed to what he's done, because I don't want to put him in a spot where he has to talk about anything he's not going to talk about. So I guess, Pete, I'll start with this question with you. When you became a counterintelligence agent, straight in, or did you transfer over from something else?
Really lucky. My career has been, I would say, circular. And when I first came in, no, it wasn't with counterintelligence. I was a signals intelligence voice interceptor, and I went to the Defense Language Institute for German and then later for Arabic. And so I transitioned out of that when they were closing down the German side of it with the fall of the wall. Um, and then I was able to expand on that signals intelligence background and go into a human intelligence background. So it kind of rounded the whole intelligence piece out for me, really.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you transfer from one intel discipline to another, and then how long was it before you're like, you know what, I still got to go and do something else?
Well, that's an interesting question too, because when I went to DLI in 88, 89, um, that's basically all I knew. I wanted to learn a language, and I thought it would be really interesting to do that. And I met a few, I would say, very influential people in my life um, who had been in special operations. And in particular, this one gentleman I met, he was an E4 specialist, and he transferred over from infantry. And he asked me one day, "Would you like to go and do a ruck march?" And I thought, why on earth would I want to do that? He goes, "Hey, man, it'll be really fun." So we put boots on, put backpacks on, and we ran from the Monterey Bay Peninsula around on the beach, um, the Monterey Bay, and then we turned around, we came back, ran up the hill. And I don't know what sadistic uh, thing got in my mind, but we just kept doing it. And then we
Mm.
met another individual who had wrote a book, um, and he was connected with special operations in a very deep sense, long history. And he introduced us to a course that we could run just south of Carmel, California. Okay, so I really got the bug, and this guy was connected with special forces, and I thought, you know what, that's what I want to do. And so I don't know why I did it, but I just kept putting that rucksack on and walking up and down and running hills and all this kind of thing. And I decided that I wanted to be a special forces medic, and that was early on at the Defense Language Institute in 88, 89, 90. Well, because I was under bonus and I was in a critical MOS, a critical job, the military intelligence branch was not going to release me. And I didn't like that. And sometimes things that you don't like actually are the best for you. And so what that led me into was the counterintelligence field. I kept training. I went to Germany. I was the weird guy that had the rucksack on all the time and just
All the
going
time.
everywhere. And you probably remember, I
I
would,
do.
yeah. So I had the bug, and I got to tell you, I really loved doing counter intel work. It was really stimulating intellectually. Um, I still had that bug, and so I just continued to train, and I got an opportunity in '95 to go to assessment and selection, and I passed. I just imagine that I passed it, and so then it was another career change, and off to the Q course, off to 10th Special Forces Group, and it's really interesting the skills and the experience that I was gaining in signals intelligence and then in counterintelligence, human intelligence, all culminated together in the Special Forces journey. It's really quite incredible for me, but I really feel fortunate and lucky that the events that transpired happened in that order. So I mean, that's kind of the long and the short of it.
No, it's a great thing. So I want to go back a little bit in time. You were the guy who was wearing the backpack, which always begat the question, why is that guy wearing a backpack? And then someone say, oh, he's training for selection. And so I was like, oh, cool. And then before I could, because we didn't work in the same, we were often in the same building, but we didn't work in the same little mini post. So I never really got a chance to get to know or chat with you very much. And if our paths had overlapped by maybe 6 more months, I probably would have followed your lead because I really felt trapped at the 165th. I was stuck at headquarters. I'm a max PTer. I'm working my ass off to self-develop. I'm doing all the things that indicate that, hey, this guy is trying to get himself promoted. Like I looked at there's an 800 of the audience. It's an 800 point system that gets you from E4 to E5, from specialist to sergeant. Yeah. And I'm like, if I control 600 of these points, so I'm just going to have 600 that I'll go to the commander and let him figure out what I want because I can't control that. And I'm hoping that by hitting 600, because you can get promoted any month you want if you have enough points, Yeah. And that didn't work.
No. It doesn't work that way. The ultimate number of points, as you well know, is controlled by folks other than the individual. And it, I mean, from an HR standpoint, the Army and I imagine the other services can very finely tune how many soldiers and airmen and seamen advance through different levels of leadership. And they do it with that point system. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I feel like happened was as I was self-developing, like I started the team football team, the unit football team, the unit softball team. I'm doing correspondence courses. I've won every soldier of the whatever board I sat in front of. And so I just self-developed. I think that a lot of, look, and I got bounced around. Pete, I think I had 8 NCOs while I was in the 165th. So everybody got excellent leadership blocks, right? Credit, like, hey, that guy's a great NCO, or that lady's a great NCO because look at what this guy's doing. But they didn't never promote me, Like, I think that my desire was so outside of what was normal for counterintelligence agents, and where I was, I really couldn't even do a whole lot of counterintelligence work, right? And so I'm scraping ovens and stoves and moving camo nets around when I should be doing something.
Yeah, we were doing a lot of that. That's for sure. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I was in a field station. I wasn't at headquarters, so I was able to do a lot more than I felt like I would be able to do when I was at headquarters. But even so, the real tactical counterintelligence and human didn't open up until we went to Bosnia. And when we went to Bosnia, then it was wide open.
It sure was. And that was really one of those things where I had to go through this fight and do all this development because I still needed to actually develop. But when we got to Bosnia, I wasn't ready, but I was ready to get the hell off the camp and go do stuff. And that's what got me the repetitions that made me a good solid agent. I remember like when questioning started becoming automatic, I didn't have to back up and think through everything. I just had built that muscle. So I guess I want to ask you, because this is a question I'm always in search of. When do you think an agent becomes, we're talking field human now, when does someone become like a black belt at that? Like when you're like, this guy doesn't need anything else from me. I need to start learning from him because his approach is different than mine. And that's true for all of us. Uh, Everybody seems to, when I ask them and their agents, they don't have a whole lot of experience. They tend to say, about 36 months. And I'm like, how many times have you been deployed? 3 times. And I'm like, okay, so, you've been deployed a good amount, but how much you've been in the field? Of those 36, I was in the field for 10. And you don't get good in 10 months. There's no way.
No, there isn't. I think it applies principally across all sectors. And I think the answer to that for me is when you can think one step ahead or 2 steps ahead, you are at a junior level. But when you can think 3 and 4 steps ahead,
Yeah.
counterintuitively, that's when you become a black belt in any discipline. In almost any discipline, it seems to hold for me across all domains.
Our job is just smashed full of ego, and so we all think we're better than we are. None of us want to be coached into whatever it is that we need to get to, and so how do we develop people reliably? You're an NCO, you sit in front of a guy and you're trying to shape how they approach this stuff. How hard is that?
Oh boy, I lost you for a little bit there.
Okay. I was saying, as an NCO, when you're trying to develop that third and fourth level, right, to bring someone to mastery, how do you do that? Because our job is full of a lot of ego, and it's hard to think, hey, I need to improve here or here. We all think we're there before we're there.
That's a tough one, and I think because it's tough because when I was in E6 and I had 4 people under me when we were in Bosnia, I was not an expert. I just wasn't.
Right.
When I look back, I knew a number of things, but I didn't know it enough to really be good. And I don't think that you have enough time on target really to mentor the next level below you. It seems to me there are a few outliers that are just unbelievably good from the get-go. I don't think I was that person. I lament that in a number of ways because I think that I would have liked to have mentored and given those soldiers directly under me a lot more experiential guidance.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have it. I just didn't have it. But now I'm 56 and I think I have it. I think that I can distill a number of concepts down to some really short lessons. That time is gone to mentor in that capacity. And so, you just have a large body of pool or a large body of folks that, they're trying to learn together and one's in charge of the next. And we just don't have enough experience. And that's the tough thing. I mean, we really put the military, and the folks that are in the military are just an incredible lot of people because they're all trying to figure stuff out and they're just young, you don't have the life experience. I don't know. Those are really tough questions. I have the answers now, but I certainly didn't have them then.
I didn't either. I knew how to do the job better than anybody who was around me, right? Because I'd done it more than anybody else. And even if they outranked me by a lot, I had just done it more. So there's a couple of things that go into this, and then I want you to kind of talk about that. So not all of us should be in the field talking to people. Some of us are great at analysis. Some are great at thinking of theoretical questions and like, hey, can you answer these? Those guys are terrible in the field. And you see it and you're like, oh, geez. And because we're all kind of training each other and you see someone who's bad, you're like, oh my gosh. I had a guy when I taught at CIPSO for a while, right? And this is crazy. The Army sent the person who, under the new regulation, had run as many sources as anybody else, which is not many of us, basically just a handful at most, legitimate recruited sources. They happened to send me to the CIPSO course. And I got there only because Nancy Richards, who was in our unit with us, she was there. She's like,
I know her well. Yeah.
yeah. And so she's like, Pete, I was at an E4. I was the battalion 2 for the 309th, and this is like a brigade sized battalion, so I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing as the 2. And it wasn't too hard of a job because it was pretty much a program, just had to manage it. But I went and taught at the CIFSO course, and I would have these guys come through, and they would be, Chief Whitlow came through, and a lot of them had experience, but a lot of them didn't. And so I'm trying to give them my direct experience. That never happens in the Army. It never ever happens. And so it's such an interesting thing. So not everybody needs to go. Not everybody gets advanced training. And then when you are in the field, you and I go to the field, we'll figure each other out, and we'll both be okay with the other one working. We probably will separate and go in different directions because we can cover ground by ourselves. But if I've got to troop up troops, I can't give them the reins because they're not prepared. They haven't earned the right to be on that patrol, right? They're not good enough to do that. And so then when you read the report, you're like, you missed this, you missed this, you missed this. I can see who had control of the interview from your report, and so, yeah, so it's all of these things. And I'm going to give it to you. I give you the mic and let you talk about that.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to experience. And, when we went to Bosnia, we deployed in 4-person teams, and I was the NCOIC of our 4-person team, and we had a warrant officer. So basically meant I was in charge of, a warrant officer and 2 enlisted, right? And this guy was brilliant. Technically, from a technical standpoint, he was brilliant. He was a TSCMer, so he's a technical counter measures guy. And, from that aspect, he was brilliant. He needed me from the people standpoint.
Mm.
He just wasn't. That was his weakness, and admittedly, my weakness was probably the technical piece.
Sure.
If we were to compare each other. And so my job at that point was to dovetail with what he was good at and what I felt like I was better at than he was. And God bless him, he accepted it, and a couple times, as an NCO, right? NCOs make everything happen. They just make the thought in the officer's head reality. And
right.
I had to, sit down with him and just, hey, it's the 4 C's, candor, right? I just had to tell him the way I thought it was and respect him by telling the truth and saying, look, this is the way we need to do it, in my opinion. Yeah. And this is what you need to do to make that happen. And, on a 4-person team, everybody has to, share the shovel. Everybody has to you don't have 3 people putting the GP small up in the middle of winter, which is exactly what happens. You need all 4 people. When you have a Yukon stove burning live flames inside of that thing in the middle of the night, and it can go up in a matter of this many seconds. Yeah. You need everybody to pitch in to be awake and make sure that, we don't freeze to death and we don't burn to death. Yeah. So I think, even though you have that lack of experience, it's really important to sort out how you can get the most mileage out of everybody and really respect and search for what their expertise is. I had a couple folks with me and they were completely different people. Imagine that. And I had to pull I had one guy, and this guy was such a complainer. I mean, okay. He complained in the moment, and then later down the road, he would reflect back on the very things he complained about, and he would describe them as the greatest things that ever happened. And I'll give you an example. So, on the camp we were on Camp Linda with, I forget the name of the unit, but it was a armor battalion. So they were tanks. And we were on I guess it would be a commercial transport depot A lot of concrete, a lot of big buildings in order to work on big trucks, and it worked great for these tankers. Well, we're on concrete, so we're surrounded by barbed wire and all this kind of thing on the camp, and the outhouses. Well, you remember we'd build an outhouse structure over the top of 55-gallon barrels.
Yeah.
You'd put the barrel in and fill it up and then pull it out. Well, from a sanitary perspective, you have to do something with that. Well, what did we do? We poured JP8 diesel fuel in it and we burned it and stirred it for hours and hours and hours. Well, you had to stir it. You had to have somebody do it.
Yeah.
And we all shared the wealth. And so when they came around and said, okay, counterintelligence team, you're helping out. Oh my gosh, the arms went up. Oh my God, we're way better than this. We can't do this. We're that task is way below us. Well, tough luck. We have to do it. And so I took the first shift and I went out there and I, did my duty all day long and came back, and then everybody else did. And this guy complained and complained and complained. Now, don't get me wrong. I love this guy. He was a great guy. And years later, he gave me such a hard time. Years later, he sent an email and he said, hey, man, I just want to thank you. I remember when we had to stir crap and you took the first shift, and I really respected that. And, I know I complained, but it was, it's all good. I remember it fondly. If you can remember something like that fondly. But anyways, you have those personalities, and you just have to, you don't have to, but it sure makes it a lot more efficient if you can figure out who's who and put their skills to the best work.
Yeah.
That's a very circuitous way to answer your question, but that's kind of where I am on it. Yeah.
It's a big question, and there's even things within that, and I want to explore this even more because there are the personality types, and everybody wants to be the good field guy, but the fact is, most people aren't. That's just the bottom line. And so, I'm going to go out, and I'm going to be able to collect better. So I've got to surrender the reins to somebody who I know, and this isn't the minor leagues. This is dangerous shit, And so you're like, it's like you're getting into a moving race car, and I'm going to hand you the controls.
Yeah.
We're already going full speed. And so the danger is there all the time. And that mess up might not hit us, but that mess up might turn into an IED being placed on by where we patrol.
Oh yeah.
And and so like, there's no getting offended. If you see man-boy affection, you have to be like, that's how they do it here. That's not my business. I'm not going to get involved in that, and this guy's selling gasoline illegally. I actually don't care about that. You keep on going. Here, I'm going to buy some gasoline from you. I don't want to become a problem, but I do want to play for keeps. And so there's that aspect of it. I want to get into that a little bit. And the other thing is the pace, the amount of work that a 4-person team has to put in to be relevant to a command. And I don't mean like they read your reports. I mean like you are changing how the commander runs their operation based upon your intel. Yeah. It's hundreds of hours of work a week if you have a 4-person team all working and pulling on that paddle and getting us going in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, in that vein, there's a difference between providing information and providing insight. And you can say, if we break this down and straw man it, you can say the enemy's here, the enemy's here, the enemy's moving in this direction, the enemy did this and did this and did this before. Okay, so what? The relevance, I think, to a commander to present, it's one thing to present the data, and it's another thing to have an opinion on what you think it means. I think they're going to do this. And there's a difference between projection and prediction, right? Projection is one thing, 1, 2, 3, what comes next? A, B, C, what comes next? That's projection. But prediction is the business that we're in. And that's where you say, here's a stick figure of a walking person. Here's a banana peel. Here's a set of steps. They're completely unrelated. What happens next? Wow. Okay. Slips on the banana, falls down the stairs. I think this person has a high likelihood of falling down the stairs. We should prevent that. or we should mitigate it, or we should push them. I don't know what, but that's where you have uh, the real relevance of what someone in the intelligence business can bring you. And for us, human intelligence, it's different than listening to a radio. When you listen to a radio, it's one way. It comes into you through your ears and you receive it, but you don't interact with it necessarily, right? With human intelligence, it's a back and forth. It's a game. And there can be rules to it, and then there can be situations when there's not rules to it, and then there's the prediction piece, and there's the projection piece, and all this comes together, and that's why it's difficult for a 1, 2, 3, 4 year person to have the wisdom, the intelligence plus the intellect plus the experience, to have that wisdom in order to see 4 and 5 steps ahead, right? It just takes time to do that.
Yeah. It's so great. It is a lot. So as you're talking about, I'm thinking about all of the things that you're not even able to say, and I know you know them, but I'm like, how do I get this to the audience? Like, for example, have I met the right people? Who else do I need to meet? Who's running who? Like, oh my God! Like it's my favorite question to ask younger people. Like, who's running who in this situation? Because you got to talk to dastardly people if you're doing your job, and if you can't get to the dastardly people, then you've got to get good enough to get to those people. And there is a game being played, and there's things being exchanged. Even if you never meet this person, and there's always going to be more of the enemy than there is of us, right? And so you have to have this brain that gets all of this stuff in there, and you're making the best guess that you can. I love to ask like a captain, from like a company level guy, hey, what's the quality of your intel picture in this region? And if they say anything more than like 60%, I don't take them seriously, because I know they don't know enough about. They don't look. You got all these shadowy figures on your link analysis chart. You don't even have a picture of this person. You don't know who their wife is. You don't know anything about these people, right? And so those are the things that I'm looking at. It's like this massive social network that I've got to figure out the most efficient way to get to the people that no one else can get to. And the other thing that I found enormously valuable was to go back to the place where we ran an operation, because some of that prediction piece is by looking back at performance. And so I would say, okay, we did an ag op here in this little hamlet here in Afghanistan. Okay, this is 2 weeks later. Let me find out what happened 2 weeks ago. And when there's nary a trace, the boss wants to know that, and all of these things he's trying, because I know what the commander wants. Look, you can write all the IRs you want. I know what you want. I see your mission on the wall. It's the same mission as the last guy, and the same mission as the last guy before that. And so how do I help you see what hasn't been working, so you're not going to, by program, make the same mistakes as the guys behind you?
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe this is a question right back to you, or just to confirm or deny. And that is, a lot of times I ran into a situation where it was really important for me to know the history, and when every single time I've done a turnover, I'm very interested in knowing what that person's idea of the sequence of events and the players, and what their agendas are and that kind of thing. But I want to know that history to put it together. But I also want to know the history of the command element, what they traditionally looked for, how they had those questions answered. And you can get a lot from the mission statement and the commander's intent and the IRRs and this kind of thing. I think there's a lot of flavor that can be added on top of that gives those bulleted items shape.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, I know it makes sense to you. I don't. If I were to apply it to, business, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What's the other companies out there, our competitors? What are they doing?
Yeah.
What's the history of the market? that kind of thing. And I think a lot of these things translate over. They're just
They
terms.
do.
Yeah, different
You
terms.
know, that that example. So when we went to Bosnia, first one's there, looking around like nobody's done this. It's all on us to get it started, right? And some places didn't even need to be there, right? So that's different. We're talking about we've been there for a long time, and we have systems where we can look into the SharePoint server and we can see every slide generated for the last 5 years, whatever, right? And if I have my own intel, my analyst guy, I'd say I need to know everybody they've engaged with over the last 5 years, every time they set up a drip irrigation system or whatever it is. And so here's what I would do. I didn't have my guy. I had to do it myself. And so I would go back and the unit would start saying, hey, we're going to start doing drip irrigation. And I would go, oh, great. I know exactly what to do. I already have intel on this. And so I would go back and I would grab the slide deck from the last 4 units. And I would say, okay, and I'd go to the major and I would say, hey, man, here are the last slides from the last 4 units as they tried drip irrigation. Now I'm going to do whatever you guys want to do, but I sense a problem, because they're not briefing on the quality of the last projects, and so this allows the commander to say, hold on a second, what do you mean this is, and they know that it's happened 4 years before, but now it's in front of their face. Like,
Yeah.
should we go survey these sites? Hint, hint, hint,
Yeah.
and then because, and this, relevance to the commander is also access to the commander and their thoughts, and then access to their patrols, because I need to be protected on the camp and then get off the camp. And so I need freedom of motion. And if the commander doesn't believe in you, if you're not giving them things to worry about that are real things that they can put their resources into, then you're not as relevant as you can be. And so that's how I think about it. Like, let's go and look at these things and let's get them right, because the history says this. And here's my big story. So the unit before Iraq, the Iraq general who owned.
Oh.
Okay. The Iraqi general who owned the battle space came to the American camp, right? And in our theory, like the Iraqi general is the boss, right? The American commander is there to partner with. And so he gets stuck outside the camp and they won't let him on because there's a security threat. This is a general officer who's like, no, you can't come on camp.
That's bad. That's bad PR.
In the middle of summer. And so he was pissed. He was so fucking mad. And then the next colonel came and I couldn't get him to get it. I wasn't good enough yet at that point. But the next colonel came and I'm like, hey man, that general holds a deep grudge 2 partners ago that you're going to have to work on and figure out. And I don't know how to do this. We're going to have to figure this out together. It's going to take time. But we would back channel and we would talk to him and we'd make jokes about it, try to like chip away at this thing. I don't know that we ever figured it out. But that threat, that danger, that weakness was there, and only if a commander was even capable of recognizing. And I'm not talking down about commanders; they had a lot of shit to figure out.
Oh yeah.
But this was a historical thing. It was a wound that we had that inhibited our ability to work as efficiently. And that's one of the things I've tried to do. Like, this exists. We have to deal with this, or by design, don't. But understand, this is not going to go away.
That's right. And those examples, there's so many of them, but you on a number of things. One, getting access to the commander, and that is, I think, a supremely important thing, at least to me, is I want to interact and understand what the decision makers are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's also my job to bring those intangibles, those things you can't touch and feel, like in this case, the generals, the local generals' feelings on something. That is huge. It's huge. It is an invisible wall that you can't get around. And if you have the key to that, a door that can get through that wall, I mean, everything opens up. And that's the role that CI and other folks can play in the intelligence community for the commander, is those intangibles that you just can't see by detecting where a unit is and detecting what direction they're going, and getting a salute report on the size, activity, location, unit, time, and equipment of something you see in the field. They're hugely important, because at the end of the day, it's human minds that are either the problem or the solution. It's not the equipment. The equipment knows nothing, left or right, and that's a huge thing, And when you're interacting with that person on the ground, what's the public face and what's the private face? What's the agenda? Actions can be pantomimed, or they can be a result of unwittingly or unknowingly telegraphing to you what the real intent is. So you have to sort it out, and that's the beautiful game of human intelligence, is trying, what is this that I see? What is this that I hear? And it's the 738-55 rule. 7% of the communications are the words. 38% of the communication is the inflection, the tone, and the mode of expression. And then 55% is body language. 55%. I need to see these people. I need to get in front of them. I need to get in front of the commander so that I can understand by looking and there's I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, but there's in some people's, ancient, maybe modern, where when you meet and you look at each other and you say, I see you and I'm here to be seen. And it's way deeper than just your eyeballs. We're talking about seeing the whole person inside and out. And that's what I'm after, because 55% of the communication is body language, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's so important. And that goes, with negotiation.
Yeah.
Great book on that is, I think Chris Voss is Never Split the Difference. Great book. Black Swan organization. Yeah, great book. But so what I did then in counterintelligence, what I did in subsequent years, and what I do now as an independent contractor centers around those concepts.
Yeah,
that's it. It centers around those concepps. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you and I are having a conversation between us that nobody else can even comprehend. And we're not back channeling. Like, we both get way more than what's being said, and it's
there's a lot that's not being said. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a representation of your and my combined mastery over this topic, because we can talk. Well, you and I both know there's 10 different directions we can go right now, and the directions are spherical, so it cones out and then goes into this big ball of knowledge. I would say all of that communication stuff is important, and I'm a big believer of this. Is emotion is way more important than. So I always say affect beats effect. If I can find the emotion that you're trying to create, belief in the government, or a reduction of hate towards us, whatever it's going to be, the commander wants to know that, right? And so you can send out all the leaflets you want. Leaflet. Here's a Christmas tree. All these things. That doesn't mean shit if no one's like, hey man, the Americans are all right. Those guys are helping us get our own country back, right? And so that emotion, so that's thing, like that's that next level. Like, how do you, when you see a guy vibing and you know to shut the fuck up and let him talk, and you're just nudging the conversation, if at all, and they're just pouring their heart out, and they're like, I got to introduce you to everybody. I'm just in shut up mode and just receive and listen. And but they don't teach us that stuff. It's hard to teach. You have to be so comfortable with the worst way to get information. You might know this, is I always say, like, don't ever say, where's the bombs? Where are the bombs? Like, that's the perfect way to never find that out, right? You have to never ask that question. So I would never ask a threat-based question, because the second you do that, you show your hand. I don't care what the commander wants. I know how to get what the commander needs. And so I let it all come at me. And instead of being the force and going forward, I am something different. And I don't know what I'm going to be each day. I don't know if I'm talking to a farmer. I don't know if I'm talking to an Army major. Yeah. But I do know that I'm trying to get us to be less shitty at our job, so that when we impact folks on the ground, we are more apt to get the result that we want.
Well, I agree with you, and I think, boy, you're sparking so many different ways to go with this. I think that fundamentally you have to care. Number one, you have to care, and it's rapport building.
Yeah.
It's simply rapport building, but rapport building isn't simple. There's so many facets to it, and and then there's techniques out there that are ancient and well described, in Sun Tzu, Maurice's Strategicon, the 33 stratagems, on and on. And, one of these concepts is, to understand or to reveal what is behind somebody's public face. Just as an example, there's a technique that can be described as beating the brush to find where the snakes are, or stirring the waters to catch fish. And it simply means that you say something inflammatory and stir them up and let emotion drive their answer. And now you probably know the true nature of where they are and who they are. And you read that communication, the 73855, you read all three categories, process it, and see and determine if what you're hearing is fact, truth, about them. Is that their public face? Are they giving me an answer, or did I get behind it and spark that emotion? It's ancient techniques. But there's how many more? Hundreds. Yeah. I mean, Kahneman, if you read Thinking Fast and Slow, the author of that book, he and his associates over the years have identified, I think, 150 cognitive biases, and you can absolutely use those as tools.
Right.
And you should, but at the end of the day, you have to care. And you also touched on another thing, with the person, that maybe engaging in questionable activities. Well, here's the thing, right? At a certain level, it's very beneficial to put judgment aside. I mean, I was in several situations where I happened to be, it was commonplace for men to hold hands and walk. And I developed a very close relationship with a gentleman who was married, faithfully married, I believed. And we were walking, and he just reached over and grabbed my hand. Yeah. And if I had let ego take over and judgment take over, I might have retracted, and the rapport is blown. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, what would he have thought? Oh, I've overstepped my bounds. This guy doesn't like me anymore. The relationship is in jeopardy. I just held his hand, and we walked and talked, and that was the end of it. And so the rapport continued, and it grew, and we were able to enjoy, from the U.S. side, we were able to enjoy an unbelievable relationship that was very fruitful. All because I didn't pull my hand back, you know? And like, in the big scheme of things, what's the adult thing to do? Scold him and pull your hand back? Or is that just something that we believe in America? And, and it goes to another thing, what are our beliefs? We have so many beliefs that we don't even realize we believe them. We believe that when we get out of our bed in the morning and we go to hop off our bed, what do we believe without thinking? We believe that the floor is going to stop us from falling into the abyss, right? Yeah. We don't think about it, but we believe it, right? Right. So I think that, the belief is intertwined in that as well. And, to seek mastership of anything, you really gotta love it. And this stuff, I mean, it's fascinating. Yeah. It's just fascinating to me. Human nature and interaction and neuro-linguistic programming and what motivates people and rapport building. And, here's the one thing I learned in Special Forces, right? So I feel like, yeah, I'm kind of sliding over if I may, but
Please.
uh, I feel like a number of folks are scared of this special forces, gun thing, right? Uh, and special forces in the Army is set up regionally around the world. I was in 10th Special Forces, and their region is Europe. And you go to language school and you learn the culture. If you don't, if you're not the kind of person that loves culture, I don't know if there's a place for you in Special Forces. It's all about culture. It's all
Hmm.
about rapport building. It's all about having a love for the people that ultimately, in the charter of special forces to go behind enemy lines and work with indigenous people. If you have problems with that, I don't know how you can be successful. I don't know if there's even a place for you. It's about language and culture. And that's what I loved about that, organization and that experience is that
Hmm.
they enveloped it in the very place that you think would fight it, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So interesting sidebar there. Yeah.
No, but it's a key thing because you're talking about the hand holding thing. I've had my hand held, and it's not just allowing it, it's to be like, I am comfortable in your culture because they're extending a trust to you. You're exchanging trust in this moment. And I look at, like, what are the KPIs for a collector, right? Like, you're a junior collector, like, can you get someone to walk in the door? Great. That's good. But you're doing the basic things. And then you get to the higher level things that are harder to achieve. So I knew that if I was new to an area, I knew were the things that I needed to have happen before I was really done setting up my network and my program. One was, are my words being spoken in the staff meetings, which means I've got to spend time in the staff meetings. And if my reports aren't coming through and they aren't saying my sentences, I got to get to work. I got to get my reading list built up. I've got to have lunch with more people. I've got to get better information. Um, if the sheikh is grabbing my hand and walking with me through town, man, that is a trust. That's trust.
That's
And
a
I'm like,
win.
okay, we
That's a
have
big
this level.
win.
Can we ratchet the trust level up? Will he invite me to his house and vouchsafe my travel with his own people? Hey, Pete, I want you to come to my compound. No army guys, just you. And then I got to decide, like, oh, do I trust that? Right? That's a different thing.
Yeah,
But I'm
that's a
looking
big
for these
thing, right?
things.
Yeah.
The other thing is on the camp, like, not only are they saying my words, are they coming to me for counsel? Hey, Pete, will you come to my office? I want to talk to you about some stuff.
Oh
And
yeah.
so now I'm more than a report. I'm influencing how this unit does these things. Or when the boss is like, hey, will you go talk to Sergeant Jensen? And he doesn't say it, but I need you to tune him up, like, go have a conversation with him. And he trusts me to go out to a guy who I have no authority over and say, hey, man, how are things going? And just all of this stuff. So I'm being deployed either by myself or by them. And hopefully it's more of them. The other key thing I need is I need the word Pete to show up in the enemy intel. So when we intercept something, like, someone will come breathless to me. Oh my God, Pete, Pete. And by the way, they're always calling me Pete. They don't call me Mr. Turnout kind of thing, right? I've got to become familiar. This is a real quick aside. When I go to a remote camp, like if I go to your guys' camp, I'm going to bring, if at all possible, and you guys probably don't have it, I bring ice cream, like 5-gallon tubs. I come walking up there. I got ice cream
Yeah.
because I gotta be known, right? And so when you take all of these things and you put them together, are they saying Pete in the intel report? Oh, good. I was waiting for that. Thanks for telling me. That's a key piece of information. I'm in the game. I got a number on my back. I got a
Yeah.
jersey. I'm
Yeah.
playing the damn game.
Oh yeah. No, 100%. And for each one of the things that you mentioned, there's a limit, right? So,
Yeah.
on the hand holding thing as an example, that's something that I'm okay with, and at the same time, I have my morals and my ethics and my standards and my limits.
Sure.
And so when you reach a limit, how you deal with
Mhm.
it can be very delicate. It's doable, and it's analogous to someone else's limit. If you
Mhm.
connect the two, they understand. And also there's a
Yeah.
limit to
That
bringing.
ability to
Yeah,
exchange culture. That's what we're
yeah,
talking about, right? Like,
And there's a
Yeah.
limit to bringing gifts. I've made the mistake of gifting to somebody who's at this level when it's an insult to their superiors and they've been punished for it. And so, we all run into that early on at the junior level. The soccer ball for any kids worldwide, yeah, you give it to one kid and then they get beat up by another kid because you violated the pecking order. So it's so critical. And we even see that in chimpanzees. I mean, a number of chimpanzee attacks were simply because the birthday cake was given to one of the chimpanzees that didn't deserve that kind of gift, and the other chimpanzees attacked. Well documented.
Yeah.
So it works with humans, and even pecking order. That comes from chickens. There's an order. There's a hierarchy. Some get pecked based on their hierarchy. So it's important to realize that. So every it seems that when you kind of move up and you learn the game better, every positive that you have also has a negative side if it's implemented out of turn, I guess, or the wrong way. So, and you learn that stuff, and you learn culture. Just for instance, in one cultural thing that I thought was very interesting, Somalia, as an aside, is that when you call a person this way. Come to me this way. If you do it this way, that's animals. You do animals this way. And so, in America, it would be, hey, come here. You better do it this way.
Yeah.
And that applies everywhere. Everywhere. If you don't get the culture down. But, yeah, interesting.
I want to say this about the cultural exchange too, is you don't have to know this versus this. You don't have to know that. What you have to know is that you don't know what the things are that are going to be.
That's right.
And so you've got to say, I've got to go, hey, Pete, how do you guys, when you see me do something, I want you to tell me, because I want to understand how you guys do things. Like, so what this means is that when you sit in a room and you're like, I have no fucking idea what is going on right now. Yeah. This is all foreign to me. It's time to shut up, get small, not afraid to offend, but like, you really got to take it all in and then start asking questions. So one of the things I learned, and this seems totally obvious, but when you're in the mix, you just don't have time for the obvious sometimes. And so we would have all these shuras and meetings, and Afghans would come in and out of the room. Oh boy, we're all working. But if there's not a religious man in that room, no decisions being made by the Afghans. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it takes forever to accept that. Like, hey, we don't have a separation of church and state. We have a separation of church and state. They don't. The word Islam was in the title of the government of Afghanistan. It says Allah Akbar on the flag of Iraq, and so we have to be comfortable with their program. And if I can accomplish my goal on their cultural channel, that's way easier. It's way more efficient. Harder for me, but that's my job, is to learn what that is, so that this and this equal, wow, they just are we're letting them make decisions. I see them making the decisions in their way and actually getting the results that we want more reliably than us forcing something.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, man, fun stuff.
It is. And I don't want to take too much of your time. I just want to ask you one more real quick thing. And it's a big question, but just take a stab at it. When we look at like all the things that we fantasize about and how we train our people, like I'll say this, like I can tell Sergeant Jensen, hey, go make sure that your troops can all hit center mass with 2 different weapons. And there's a lot of drills and things you can do, and you can work on it. And be like, I got my guys doing exactly what you said, boss. You can do that. Dime washer drill. They don't have that for culture. They certainly don't have that for working with interpreters. It's all self-taught. We don't have a high-end kill house training for people like us to go sit in a cafe wherever we are in the world and be able to get information. Why is that?
There are some nooks and crannies out there where that is addressed. And I think that probably the reason why they're nooks and crannies is because a smaller percent of the population. Now this isn't an indictment of
Sure.
the population in general, but I think that it's just not necessarily emphasized. We emphasize tangibles more so than intangibles, and we emphasize, I think, in America, we emphasize tolerance, and the term inclusion. And then don't get me wrong, we should include that. I mean, we should include everyone. I don't think that we put the emphasis on how to do it. We tell people to do it. It's like we're all told to concentrate. All you need to do is just concentrate on this, and then you'll understand it. Okay, well, how do you concentrate? Well, there are places to go to understand how to concentrate. In fact, there's a really wonderful TEDx or TED discussion where I think a monk describes in detail, and it's not a long one, but describes how to do that. There are places that teach us how to do exactly what you're talking about. They're just not as popular as we think they should be. We simply say include everybody, or tolerate everybody, or accept everybody. And those are great slogans, but where's the meat and potato behind it? Just like you're saying, where is the meat and potato behind it? And a large part of what I do professionally is delving into those specifics. And for me, a large part of what I do is hiring and recruiting and hiring for specific roles, both on the civilian side and in the military side. And you can get there. You can teach it. It's teachable. I don't feel like there's that much interest as you and I would like it to have. Yeah. I would love it for it to be, universal, but I think people are just so busy doing other stuff that they don't get into that. And our culture right now is a drunk monkey culture. When we look at, like, for instance, when we look at a how-to show, how to woodwork, they switch. They'll have 4 different stories going on at the same time, and you get 5 seconds of this, switch over to what these people are thinking, then switch back over here. If you look at the way that social media is set up, I mean, we have social media where it's take a picture of yourself and that's it. Blink, right? It's just these snapshots. The ability to put your attention and your mind on something for more than 15 seconds is a really tough thing to do. Try it. I challenge anybody who's watching this, try it. And then think about what it would be to do for a minute. And, one of the modern, and I'm going to butcher this too, I'm getting little snapshots, but one of the most patented, a gentleman has the most patents in, modern, in the modern world. I think he said, the reason I'm able to do things like this is because I can put 15 minutes of concentration on a single subject. Yeah. I'm not that guy. I'm the 45-second guy, and then I'm wandering. It is trainable, though. It is trainable. We chop our selves up mentally into such fine pieces, we can't sit down and concentrate on one thing. And to sit down and have a conversation and really hear what you're saying, listening to what Pete Turner is saying, and instead of thinking up a response or a backup to the last thing I said, right? Just turn it off and listen.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable skill, and it is very satisfying. It's satisfying to me to have a conversation that goes back and forth. I love it.
Yeah, I love that too. I love I was going to say the ability to sit and hear an entire conversation and just absorb all of it, and not even need to take notes because you're so focused. And I don't mean like I'm focused. I mean like a gentle focus where just the whole conversation is there, and you can just pick the specific parts that you want to ask about. And you're not worried about the commander. You're not worried about IRs. You're just trying to have a perfect conversation and then write about it. That to me is so much more powerful than question answer, question
Yeah.
answer, question answer.
Yep. I agree. 100%.
Yeah.
If your mind is divided up, you're not getting that 55%.
Right.
Your eyeballs are on something else. You have to look at the person. I'm here. I see you, and I'm here to be seen.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I should say this out loud too. When I was working, I realized like people say, build trust, build rapport. Like, well, how? What are the steps? Where's the training? Like where's the manual? Like step one. And don't give me a smart card that's be like, I have now had the conversation for 15 minutes. I have asked about your brother and your sister, and now we have trust. Like don't do that. Like really do it. And so this guy named Robin Dreek, who was a counterintelligence agent in the FBI, he codified it. And I'm like, I'll be damned. He's doing like we independently discovered this thing. He wrote the book. He gets the credit for doing all that. But a lot of it is like just suspend your ego. Don't ask for anything. See what they need. Can you be of service to them? That's how you build trust with people. And then you ratchet up the level of danger and risk in our world. But yeah, there's a program. And you're welcome to take that and modify it in a different way. But if you know that program, now you can working from a doctrine that two different field dudes have said, yeah, that works. That's exactly what I try to do right there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Well, listen, I would love to go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, I could just go on with you forever.
I know. But this is the thing that's magical about this is that we can do this. We can have another conversation. We can bring another agent. Maybe you and Robin and I will do a show and we'll talk about trust. And it's just, I think it's cool that we have this platform to explore all of this, all the challenges of doing this job that is a wonderful job, wonderfully hard, and what it takes to get great. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man, and it's so much fun. Do you have anything you want to say in closing?
No, I'd like to leave it open-ended, like, there's a sequel, and just appreciate you reaching out to me, and we had some history, and it's awesome. And I look back fondly on those days, and yeah, man, we'll have to get together off camera and do a little bit of team talk.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I'd look forward to that. But appreciate you, and yeah, hopefully this is entertaining or helpful to anyone who's watching. And yeah.
That's great, man. It is. I get reached out to by young troops all the time saying, how do I get better? And that is the number one goal. We're entertained and having a great time, but those young people that are coming up that want to learn, I want to be a resource for that. We're a resource for that. So I thank you for that as well. Let me roll the credits. Stand by. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank